Have you ever heard an Israeli speak Tagalog? Sounds impossible, right? The very idea might seem strange. After all, Hebrew and Tagalog are worlds apart, and Israel and the Philippines are distant, each with its own unique history, culture, and language. But what if I told you that, in 2025, thousands of Israelis voluntarily enrolled in Tagalog language classes? Not because they had to, not for school or for work. It's a story that might just change how you see both countries, and how you think about the power of connection. In a world where cultures often clash, where people look at each other with suspicion or misunderstanding, this wasn't just about learning a new language. It was about something much deeper. Israelis, from all walks of life, were finding a place to belong, a place that spoke to their hearts in ways they didn't expect. And it all started with a single word: Mahal. It wasn't a planned trip for them. These Israelis didn't come to the Philippines for a business venture, for diplomatic ties, or even for the warm beaches and food they had heard about. They came because there was something about the Philippines, the people, the culture, the warmth, that reached out to them in ways they couldn't explain. One of them was Noam, a 19-year-old from Tel Aviv. Noam had always been a wanderer at heart. Growing up in the bustling city of Tel Aviv, he had traveled before: Thailand, Vietnam, even New York. But his heart yearned for something more than the usual tourist destinations. He wanted to experience something deeper, something real. So when he heard about the Philippines, he decided to go, expecting a few weeks of sandy beaches, great food, and a little adventure. But when Noam arrived in Manila, he realized the Philippines was nothing like he had imagined. Yes, the beaches were beautiful, and the food was incredible, but there was something else, something that caught him off guard. It wasn't the picturesque views or the vibrant cities. It was the people, the warmth, the openness, the kindness they exuded without even trying. Noam had never experienced anything like it. His journey in Manila began just like any other traveler's might. He checked into his hostel, unpacked his things, and ventured out to explore the city. But as soon as he stepped out into the streets of Manila, something unexpected hit him. The noise, the energy, the chaos, it was overwhelming. But as he walked down the crowded streets, he started noticing something else. A smile from a stranger, a nod of recognition from a local vendor. It wasn't just politeness, it was genuine warmth. And it was impossible to ignore. It was on his second day in Manila that Noam found himself wandering near Quiapo Church. He had set out to explore, but soon became lost in the maze of streets. The heat of the day was starting to wear on him, and he was beginning to feel a little disoriented. That's when he noticed an elderly street vendor standing by the side of the road. "Are you okay, anak?" she asked with a kind smile. Noam froze, momentarily taken aback. He had no idea what anak meant, but the way she said it, so full of concern and care, touched him deeply. He smiled back, not sure how to respond, but grateful for the stranger's kindness. "Yeah, I'm okay," he said, trying to hide his confusion. But something in the way she looked at him, in her eyes, made him realize he wasn't just another lost tourist. She saw him, and more importantly, she wanted to help. The warmth of her gesture was unlike anything Noam had experienced back home. Later that afternoon, Noam went to a small turo, a local Filipino eatery, to grab a bite to eat. He was hungry, but he was also aware that his money was running low. The exchange rate had caught him off guard, and he wasn't sure how much he could afford. He approached the counter, unsure of what to order. Without a word, the woman behind the counter, a motherly figure, smiled at him and started piling food onto a plate. She handed it to him, with a kind, almost knowing smile. "Eat, anak," she said, even though Noam had no pesos left in his pocket to pay. "You eat first." Noam's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know what to say. He had been raised to believe that nothing in life comes without a price. And yet, this stranger, this kind woman, was offering him a meal without asking for anything in return. It was an overwhelming gesture of kindness that made him pause, as if time had slowed for just a moment. "Are you sure?" he asked hesitantly, feeling the weight of the gesture. "Don't worry, Anak," she said with a gentle laugh. "You can pay me later. You need to eat." In that moment, Noam felt something shift inside him. It wasn't just the food, it was the kindness, the generosity, the idea that someone could offer so much, even when they had so little to give. The words mahal started echoing in his mind. It was more than just the Filipino word for love. It was an embodiment of the culture he had encountered, of the people who didn't just live for themselves, but for each other. As Noam sat down to eat, he couldn't help but think about how different this experience was from his own country. In Israel, people were always in a rush, always busy, always focused on the next thing. He had always been taught to value independence, to work hard for what you had, and to never expect anything for free. But here, in the Philippines, he was learning that sometimes the most valuable things in life weren't the things you worked hardest for. They were the things you received with an open heart, without asking for anything in return. And that's when Noam realized it. He hadn't just come to the Philippines to see the sights. He had come here to learn something, to feel something, to discover a side of life that was completely foreign to him. As he looked around, he saw that the people weren't just welcoming. They were teaching him how to live differently, how to give, how to love. What he didn't know then, but would soon realize, was that the Philippines was more than just a vacation destination. It was a place where people gave without expectation, where love, mahal, wasn't just a word, but a way of life. Noam had stumbled upon something much deeper than he had ever imagined. And it was just the beginning. Noam was just 19, fresh out of high school in Tel Aviv, the kind of young man who had his whole life ahead of him, full of dreams and a hunger for adventure. He had traveled before, Thailand, Vietnam, even New York. So when he decided to go to the Philippines, he expected it to be more of the same. Vibrant street food markets, lively nights out, the thrill of exploring new places. He imagined a few selfies on the beach, some pictures with smiling locals, and the usual holiday excitement. But from the moment Noam stepped out of Ninoy Aquino International Airport in Manila, something felt different. The heat hit him like a wall, and the noise of the city was almost overwhelming. But it wasn't just the heat or the crowd, it was the energy of the place. There was an invisible pull that made him feel both excited and a bit uncertain. This wasn't the typical Southeast Asia adventure he was used to. Something in the air felt deeper, more personal. Noam quickly realized the Philippines wasn't just another vacation destination. He thought he knew what to expect, but the country was far more than just the postcard views he had seen online. The people, their warmth, their friendliness, these were things that struck him immediately in ways he couldn't quite explain. At first, it was subtle. A smile from a stranger, a wave from a passing motorist. But as Noam wandered through the streets of Manila, the impact of these small gestures grew stronger, until it left him a little breathless. On his second day in the city, Noam found himself wandering the bustling streets near Quiapo Church. He had set out to explore the city, but with the maze of narrow alleyways and the busy flow of traffic, he had quickly lost his bearings. A sense of mild panic started to set in. This wasn't the controlled, mapped-out world of Tel Aviv. This was a new world, unpredictable and vibrant. He stood for a moment, looking around, trying to get a sense of direction. As he hesitated, unsure which way to go, an elderly street vendor walked over to him. "Are you okay, anak?" she asked gently. The word anak lingered in the air. Noam didn't know what it meant, but the tone of her voice, soft yet concerned, struck him deeply. The word felt warm. There was no judgment in her eyes, just a genuine, caring expression. It was as if she could sense his uncertainty, and without asking for anything in return, she simply wanted to help. "No, I'm okay," he replied, not wanting to seem lost or weak. But in his heart, he felt something stirring. It wasn't just the fact that a stranger cared. It was the way she cared. It was different from anything he had experienced back home. He was used to people being polite, even friendly, but this was something else entirely. Later that day, Noam stopped at a small, family-owned turo, a local eatery where food is served buffet-style. He was hungry, but he didn't have much money left. The exchange rate from his Israeli shekels to pesos had caught him by surprise, and his wallet was a little lighter than he'd expected. As he stood there, looking at the array of dishes, an old woman behind the counter noticed him. She didn't wait for him to ask. Instead, she took a plate of food, piled it high, and set it in front of him. "Eat, anak," she said with a smile, insisting he take the meal even though his eyes betrayed his uncertainty. "Even if you don't have money, you should eat." Noam froze for a moment, not knowing what to say. He didn't know what to do. He didn't have the pesos to pay. But the old woman simply waved her hand as if to brush away his concerns. "Don't worry, anak. You'll pay me later, yes?" She smiled. There was no hesitation in her offer, no suspicion in her eyes, just a generosity that felt completely foreign to him. The warmth of that gesture lingered long after he left the small turo. Noam's mind raced as he walked back to his hostel. The Philippines wasn't like anything he had imagined. It wasn't just about the food, the beaches, or the sights. It was about something much deeper. The kindness of the people, their willingness to give without expecting anything in return, left him thinking about his own life back in Israel. He had always known his country was filled with passion, with a sense of pride in being Israeli. But in that moment, he realized there was a different kind of pride, a quieter, softer pride that he had never encountered before. It wasn't about having or owning. It was about sharing what you had, no matter how little it might seem. As Noam walked back to his hostel that evening, the city felt less foreign to him, even though he still couldn't understand everything around him. The busy streets, the chaotic traffic, and the endless chatter in a language he barely knew. It all seemed to fall into place in a way he hadn't expected. The people didn't just speak to each other with words. They spoke to each other with their actions. Mahal, love, was the foundation of everything. It was in the way people treated each other, in the way they looked out for one another. It wasn't just a word. It was a way of life. And in those quiet moments when Noam was alone with his thoughts, something shifted inside him. He didn't know it yet, but the path he was on was about to take a turn he had never anticipated. The more he experienced, the more he felt like an outsider. No longer in a foreign land, but in a place that was somehow becoming his own. The Philippines wasn't just a destination on a map. It was a place that was pulling him in, inviting him to be a part of something bigger. The change in him had begun, but he couldn't yet see the full extent of it. Noam's journey wasn't just about learning a language or experiencing a new culture. It was about understanding the power of connection, of how the smallest gestures, whether a simple word of kindness or a meal offered without hesitation, could change the way someone saw the world. It was the kind of change that doesn't happen overnight, but gradually, through moments that seem insignificant at first, but that, over time, shape a person's soul. And for Noam, it had only just begun. It was a Sunday morning when Noam stumbled upon a small church in Cavite. He wasn't sure why he walked in. It was just a feeling that drew him there. The streets were quieter on Sundays, and the usual hustle of Manila seemed to fade into a serene calm. He sat near the back, observing the congregation, the flickering candles, the peaceful reverence in the air. He didn't understand the language, but he didn't need to. There was something intangible that connected him to the people around him, something that made him feel at peace. Then, the choir began to sing. The song was Sai Lamang, a Filipino hymn that resonated deeply with the congregation. As the voices lifted in unison, something unexpected happened. Noam felt a lump form in his throat. The words were foreign to him, but the emotion behind them was not. He looked around, seeing the faces of Filipinos, men and women, young and old, singing with an intensity that was almost palpable. There was a purity in their devotion, a quiet strength in the way they sang as one. And then, a little girl sitting next to him reached up and took his hand. She smiled at him, her eyes bright and innocent, and without missing a beat, she began to sing along. Her voice was small, but it was full of life and love, echoing in the small church with an innocence that was contagious. Without warning, tears welled up in Noam's eyes. He hadn't expected to be moved in such a way. It wasn't just the music, it was the connection, the simple human connection that transcended language, culture, and borders. In that moment, Noam felt something inside him shift. It wasn't pain, it wasn't sorrow, it was a release, a sense of something breaking free. He couldn't put it into words, but he understood now that he wasn't just visiting the Philippines. He was experiencing something far more significant. This was more than just a trip. It was a transformation. The warmth of the Filipino people, the kindness, the love, they weren't just things he had witnessed from afar. They were things he had felt deep in his soul. That evening, as he sat alone in his room, Noam pulled out his journal. The words flowed onto the pages, unbidden, as if they had been waiting to come out. Maybe peace isn't a place. Maybe it's people. He read the words back to himself, his heart heavy with the truth of them. It was as though a veil had been lifted, and for the first time in his life, Noam saw the world differently. It wasn't about places or destinations. It wasn't about where you came from or what language you spoke. It was about the people you met along the way, their kindness, their generosity, their capacity to love and care for one another. This realization wasn't just a fleeting moment. It changed everything. Noam had planned to stay in the Philippines for just 2 weeks, but as he sat there, reflecting on what he had experienced, he realized that 2 weeks were not enough. He didn't want to leave. He didn't want to go back to the fast-paced, disconnected world he had known. He wanted to stay, to learn more, to be part of this world where love and kindness were not just ideals, but ways of life. He extended his stay from 2 weeks to 6 months. He enrolled in a Tagalog course, not because he had to, but because he wanted to belong, to be part of something that felt right. For the first time in his life, Noam wasn't just a traveler. He wasn't just passing through. He was making a home, and in doing so, he began to understand the power of language, not just as a means of communication, but as a way to connect with the hearts of others. As Noam's time in the Philippines stretched on, his connections with the people deepened. He didn't just learn Tagalog. He learned about what it meant to live with love, to offer kindness, to embrace others no matter where they came from. His view of the world shifted. He saw that despite all the challenges and differences, the essence of humanity was universal. It was found in the small acts of kindness, in the smiles shared between strangers, in the songs sung in churches, and in the quiet moments of connection that transcended all else. Noam's story wasn't just about one Israeli learning Tagalog. It was about the way a country and its people can change someone, can teach them, transform them, and remind them of what truly matters. It was a story of a journey that started with a simple word, mahal, but ended with a deeper understanding of the world and of himself. And that's the truth about the Philippines. It's not just a place on a map. It's a place where people live with their hearts wide open, where love isn't just a word, but a way of life. The Philippines isn't just a destination for tourists. It's a home for those willing to open their hearts, just as Noam did. In the end, Noam's journey was a reminder that sometimes the places we least expect are the ones that can teach us the most. The Philippines had given him something he hadn't known he was looking for, a sense of peace, a sense of belonging, and a sense of love that, in this divided world, is more precious than anything. Noam's story wasn't just his own. It was a story shared by thousands of others, those who came to the Philippines seeking adventure and left with something far more profound. As he boarded his flight back to Tel Aviv 6 months later, he had changed. The Philippines had changed him, and the most important lesson he had learned, a lesson that would stay with him for the rest of his life, was simple yet powerful. Love transcends all borders. And that is the essence of the Philippines, a country that invites you to embrace its warmth, its love, and its people. A country that teaches you, not with words, but with actions, that sometimes the greatest gift we can give each other is simply the gift of love. If Noam's journey has inspired you, just imagine what you could discover by opening your heart to a new culture. The Philippines isn't just a destination. It's a place where love and connection transcend borders. If you've ever felt that pull, whether it's the warmth of a stranger's smile, the beauty of a foreign language, or the kindness in unexpected places, then now's the time to explore it for yourself. So, what are you waiting for? Like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories that remind us of the power of human connection. Leave a comment below and tell us, have you ever experienced something that completely changed the way you see the world? We'd love to hear your stories. Don't forget to click the bell icon so you never miss a moment of inspiration from the Philippines and beyond. Let's keep spreading love, one story at a time.